Britain. Now, the disgraced British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell is set to appear in a New York court to appeal her sex trafficking conviction.
Yes, the 62-year-old was found guilty in 2021 of luring young girls to massage rooms for the convicted paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein to molest between 1994 and 2004.
Now, Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyer yesterday argued that a previous agreement in 2007 had promised that Epstein's co-conspirators would not be prosecuted.
But joining us now is the brother of Ghislaine Maxwell, Ian Maxwell. And Ian, thank you for making the time for us. I suppose, looking at this whole affair, it does seem pretty eyebrow-raising that your sister is appealing her conviction. We know how close she was to Jeffrey Epstein. She's not even appealing on the grounds that she didn't work to help him procure young individuals, minors, for his lurid desires. She's appealing on the grounds of some plea deal from 2007 and 2008. It's all just a bit dodgy, isn't it?
No, not at all. The only way that this appeal can be mounted is on the basis that there have been errors made by the judge and the court in the law. This is not an appeal, because it could not be, on innocence and guilt for the time being. That's been decided in the earlier trial. What this is about is the simple fact that the law has not been followed, and there has been a significant abusive process, of which this non-prosecution agreement is just one of the limbs of Ghislaine's appeal. There are 4 or 5 others making up a very substantial and serious set of claims by her, which the appeal court has to consider. And the NPA, or non-prosecution agreement, as you say, is fundamental. If a government makes an arrangement with a citizen, in this case the United States government, and says, put up your hands, go to jail, you can't have a trial, and we will agree not to prosecute anybody else, and that you accept that you are alone responsible for the actions that you did, and they then abrogate that agreement, at what point does a citizen trust its government? This is absolutely
hang on, let's just
crucial.
take a step back here, because this agreement was that Jeffrey Epstein in 2008 went to prison for 13 months, and as a condition of that imprisonment in the last decade, the US government agreed that anyone soliciting and procuring a minor that prosecutors agreed to not pursue alleged co-conspirators. Now, the defence in this case is that that was an agreement limited to Florida. Your sister is being tried in New York. Surely that's rather a large hole in that defence.
Well, I don't know what your consideration is of the USA, but in my book, it's one. You cannot have an agreement signed by USA and Florida and have it not apply in California or Pennsylvania or New York. They have just simply chosen to say it's not going to apply in this case. That's not correct.
So is the idea essentially to get her off this conviction on this legal technicality?
There's nothing technical about it at all. She should not have been prosecuted. She has maintained her innocence of the charges ever since they were raised, during trial, post-trial. This is nothing about a technicality. She should not have been charged, let alone convicted. I support my sister in her assertion of her innocence. And by the way, before this whole thing kicked off with the second arrest of Epstein in 2019, had Ghislaine had any thought that the U.S. justice system would decide to seek to charge her, or let alone put her on trial, she had the perfect right to go to France, of which she is a citizen, and from which they don't extradite to anywhere in the world. Now, she chose not to do that because there was no reason for her to go anywhere from her perspective. So I have to say, I just dispute your interpretation of it. That's it.
And Ian, when was the last time you spoke to your sister? Do you speak to her regularly? How confident is she on this?
As it turns out, and completely fortuitously, I spoke to her yesterday morning because the prisoners are able to set up calls, video calls, which are, of course, observed by the authorities for a half hour each time. Takes a bit of time to set them up, and this one happened to fall yesterday morning, her time. I found her in good shape. I found her looking okay. She is hopeful. She was hopeful, obviously, but she's also realistic. She's lost a trial. She's lost many bail applications, so she's not expecting. So this is not some pie in the sky hope. It's a very serious appeal that she's mounted. I found her in really decent shape. The thing that interested me in what she had to say about how she's using her time is that she's in fact teaching inmates, perhaps 20 at a time, once a week, on how to appeal or how to appeal internally in the prison against conditions.
Doesn't this get to the nub of it, though? There'll be many people who say that you come from a family of means, a well-connected family, a family of socialites and very wealthy people, and indeed are connected to high society. And therefore, Ghislaine and many others in this entire sorry saga have been able to afford the very best lawyers, find these tiny technicalities and throw as much stuff at the wall to see what sticks and try and prise open the American legal system to make sure that people like your sister never face the same justice as people perhaps without the same connections and without the same wealth.
Well, that's one of the reasons that Ghislaine is quite interested to help other prisoners try and assert their own rights. This is a very powerful justice system in America. There are 500,000 people this morning awaiting pre-trial, some of them banged up for years at a time. Yes, Ghislaine can afford good lawyers, but then she's facing the United States with all of its might. And we know what's happened here has been a tremendous action by the authorities to
on
show
behalf
her,
of the victims.
Well, that's another question. If you're asking me about victims, we can talk about victims, but you asked me something else.
I just think it is perhaps a little bit suspicious to say this is all the behemoth of the state against this poor individual, while forgetting the victims in the whole process, the people who appealed to the justice system in order to try and seek some justice. Ian, I could talk to you for so much longer, but I'm afraid we have run to the end of our time. Really appreciate you putting your case across, and it will be fascinating to see how far this goes. Ian Maxwell, the brother of Ghislaine Maxwell.
Thank you very much indeed.